You in this battle, man, I'll soon be dead. I'll glue your face to my dick so I can fuck with your head. I got metaphors coming through my pores. You probably never been in a battle before, so I hope you realize your mistake. There ain't no party, got some candles, this won't be a piece of cake.
All right, good morning, folks. Welcome to the Before Hours podcast, an internet radio phenomenon hosted by an occasional morning person. I ask the most interesting people I know about their sleep, their routine, life, love, stress, setbacks, whatever else comes to mind. And don't forget to write to the Before Hours podcast at gmail.com. Tell us about your morning routine, and I'll read it on the air. But for now, comedian, friend, good man, welcome to the show, Gabriel Ross. Gabriel, how are you doing?
Thank you, Bobby. I'm very happy to be here. This is fun.
I'm excited to hear that you are also recording this.
Yes.
Yes. That is because you feel like whatever we talk about today might be useful in the future.
Mhm.
Maybe put it in a time capsule.
Words I need to remember.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, thank you for coming. I think we will start with probably the most important question. Are you a morning person?
No.
Yeah. I think outside, the first thing you said to me was, I'm so tired.
Yes.
Because we were recording at 11 a.m.
It's 11 a.m. and I'm very upset that I have to be awake at this time.
I did not know this about you. I plugged you as type A, awake in the morning, ready to go, because I have booked other people in the afternoon for this very reason.
Mhm.
And if I remember correctly, outside when I had told you that I did this, your response was, why couldn't you have done that for me?
Yes.
So we're starting this out with a little bit of regret on my end.
It's all good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think every good podcast starts with an apology.
Mhm.
So Gabriel,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm a little delirious. I'll be very truthful. So, yeah, it's a good thing.
Okay. So you've never been a morning person?
Maybe not never. I don't know. Well, I feel like for the first 18 years of your life, you don't really have control over when you go to bed or when you wake up.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely was that in my case. I was like, okay, you have to go to bed now because you have to be up for school in the morning. So that's just how it is. But now that I have a say over my life, I just want to be up all night.
Okay, so you are unapologetically a night person.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so because I feel like I am naturally a morning person, but comedy has like forced me to not be, because you can't be a morning person if you're a comedian. Because I'm just coming to terms with now that when it's dark out, that doesn't mean the day is almost over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it is what it is.
For me, a lot of times when it starts to get dark out, that means my day is starting.
Yeah.
If I can do things the way I'd like to do them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you do to prepare for waking up early today?
Well, thankfully, I had a very busy night last night where I had like one show and then I was hosting a 10 p.m. show.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of got home and was exhausted. But that still meant I stayed up until like 2 or 3 a.m.
Ah, I see. Okay.
And that's getting home around midnight exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
So I just laid in bed and read for like a few hours.
Yeah. You have to wind down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like even when you're exhausted, like I still need probably an hour from when I walk into the door of my apartment to when I fall asleep.
Yeah. I need more than that because I can't like intentionally fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to literally like drive myself to pass out.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just be like, okay, lie down, close my eyes. It's time to go to bed now. And then be asleep in like 10 minutes. No, I have to drive myself until I physically can't hold my eyes open anymore.
Mm-hmm. Now, why do you think that is?
I drink too much coffee. That's probably a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure our media obsessed society with all the screen time doesn't help.
Mm-hmm.
But also I get this thing when I'm like starting to relax at night and like I am starting to wind down, like my brain just keeps going and it's like, oh, here's an idea for a thing. Here's an idea for a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you should do this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So then I start doing that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes that just carries me until the sun comes up.
Yeah, especially if it's a creative thing. Like as a creative person, you're like, well, I can't forget this. I got to, I'll find myself like writing a quick note and I'm like, well, let me just expand on this a little bit. And then you're having like a writing session. And I've always said that the one gift that I would like to give myself besides a bigger penis is the ability to write in the morning.
Okay.
It's like cup of coffee, piece of paper, writing down ideas. My brain doesn't work that way. It's almost like sorry, I just did a dick joke, but I really do think this is appropriate metaphor. It's almost like looking at your penis and going, erect now, become erect. Like that's not how it works. You know what I mean? So it's almost like
there are pills that can make that work.
see, I have been so afraid of the Blue Chews. And Blue Chew, if you want to sponsor this podcast, please plug your ears for the next 2 minutes. But I'm scared of dick pills.
Why?
Well, I feel like if I take them, I'll always have to take them. Are you a dick pill connoisseur?
I have used them, but I haven't. It hasn't been the thing where it's like, oh, now that I did this, now I have to do it.
Okay.
It's thankfully I'm not like Barry Bonds. I can still crush homers without being juiced up.
That's what you say, babe. Tonight I'm gonna crush another homer.
Yeah,
hell yeah.
I can still launch it into McCovey Cove without the juice.
Okay. Oh, juice. Like okay.
Yeah.
I heard Jews like Jewish people. I was a little confused.
Oh no.
That would be a nice conspiracy theory. Like the Jews, they control the weather and also like whether or not you could become erect.
Yeah. Or just the blood of Hasids is the greatest performance enhancing fuel.
That's a nice reverse of blood libel. It's Christians trying to get the blood of Jews to make them stay harder.
Yeah. How do you think Lance Armstrong won 7 Tour de France's?
Yeah, and who do you think took them down, huh? We could cut all of that out. So, all right, cool. So I relate to this so much because I feel like in my younger years, I really was a night person. The morning the becoming a morning person thing came later in my mid-20s with sobriety. But when I was young, I felt like I would also stay up all night. And I don't know if it was because I was a night person or not, or if I was like uncomfortable with the constant thoughts and like you needed not to like fall asleep, but to pass out. Right.
Yeah.
Doug Stanhope calls it. I think I mentioned this on the podcast before, but Doug Stanhope has a hilarious bit where he says, like, you ever try to sleep sober? It's impossible because that's when the carnival in your head goes off. And it's like every mistake you've ever made, but also like the lyrics to We Didn't Start the Fire. And like there must be something that rhymes with orange. And it's just like that shit over and over.
That was definitely the case when I was in my active addiction phase, where it was, okay, you need to just drink or smoke until you can't think anymore. Now I'm at the point where I actually get excited for tomorrow. Yeah. Which definitely wasn't the case when you're using a lot. So it's not that I'm still afraid of my thoughts. Turning off the lights and closing my eyes. They're still terrifying. But it's not so much of I need to ride this train to the end because I don't want tomorrow to happen. It's more of like, oh, but all these things I could do. Yeah. That's I think that's a good place to be where you're like, well, tomorrow I have a thing I could do tomorrow. Cause then it's like, well, okay, now I could end today. Because I also think that's if I get excited about something, I'm like, well, I'm excited about this thing now, so let me enjoy the excitement. Because tomorrow, you wake up and you're like, the sun's out, people expect things of me. Ugh. Right. But my biggest motivation for going to sleep is not being tired the next day, because as a 32-year-old, I do not handle tired the same way that I used to a decade earlier. Yeah, I'm still a young buck, so I can operate on no sleep or a couple hours of sleep pretty well, like shockingly well. Yeah, it confuses and worries the people that love me. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a talent they wish you didn't have.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when you like I try to get 9. And 9 is just like you could not possibly feel better. You know what I mean? 9 is the level where like I think if you sleep more than 9 hours, and by the way, for those listening, I'm a doctor and so is Gabriel. So but I feel like after 9, I've read that it actually has a detrimental effect. Like it's gonna like you're being inactive for too long. I don't know if that's true.
Maybe.
I've heard that 7 to 9 is the golden. Less than 7 is bad. More than 9 is bad.
Well, I'm running on less than 7 every night. But also different for different people. Like I can do, like for me, 7 is actually pretty good. Considering, okay, here's a story that like, so last weekend, I went to bed around 11 a.m. And around noon, I was pretty delirious just because I had a 10 p.m. show and then I drink a Red Bull during the 10 p.m. show because it get me going a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that just kept me going.
Yeah.
So I like passed out 11 a.m. And then around noon, I like shot upright in bed, stared at my girlfriend and said, "Do you still have my father's ashes?"
What a deeply unsettling
then, I kept going. I shot out, "Do you still have my father's ashes? Where are those punk kids with their punk clothes? You got to get out of here because I need to get my day started." And then I passed out again.
Jeez. Did she have your father's ashes?
No, he's still alive.
Oh,
he's around. Yeah, he's doing good.
God damn. That is so that was like a sleep talking situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you remember like the contents of the dream that made you say that?
It was, I remember it being very unsettling. And I remember saying the father's ashes part and a little bit of the "you need to get out of here. I need to get my day started," and then falling back asleep. But it was one of those things where I was like, I brought myself up out of this dream and I just had all this stuff going on in my head that I felt like I needed to vocalize because it would resolve the whole situation if this was now out in the open. So I said that and I think it resolved it. I think it all got taken care of.
Do you feel like it's resolved now?
Yeah. I think it's all good.
Oh my God. I want to hear like Dr. Melfi from The Sopranos like psychoanalyze what do you still have my okay, first of all, your dad, I assumed from that story that your dad is dead, but your dad is alive. So not only do you have my father's ashes, but do you still have them? Which is, it has this whole, if I'm your girlfriend, I'm like, all right, there's this whole story where I have his ashes, and then there's almost this accusatory, like, I know what you do with people's ashes. Did you sell my father's ashes? God damn, that's beautiful.
And then my favorite part is, have you seen those punk kids in their punk clothes?
Yeah, that almost sounds like a fucking poem.
Yeah, so.
Because have you seen those punk kids? That's like a Red Foreman kind of thing to say. Like, get off my lawn.
Yeah.
But then punk kids in punk clothes almost sounds like musical.
Yeah.
All of the punk kids in their punk clothes go here and there.
Yeah.
And everywhere. Okay, that was more Dr. Seuss than I had anticipated. But God damn, that's hilarious. I feel like people, and when you're in that state, it's such a like a primal thing that you could kind of do or say anything when you're half asleep. My friend, one time we were drinking. This is when I was still a drinking man. We both went to sleep. We were staying at my mom's basement. Very cool part of my life.
Yeah.
So we both like hammered, went down to my mom's basement. We went to sleep. I woke up to the sound of him pissing behind the wall unit. I had a wall unit that had like basically an entertainment system with like a TV and a stereo, which was like against the wall. So he was peeing between that entertainment center and the wall, like just onto the carpet. And so I walk over and I feel like sober at this point. And I like tap him on the shoulder and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he stops peeing, looks at me and goes, "I'm pissing, dude." and then walks over to the bathroom. And then the next day had no recollection.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's such a well, it's alcohol induced, which like fucks up your sleep even more.
Right. Yeah. This has been something I've been thinking about lately, that when I was still using, I felt like when I stayed up all night, I was getting to something.
Yeah.
I was finding a universal truth. Like I remember, I have distinct memories of like just sitting on a park bench after being out all night, strung out on whatever, and seeing people, like the highly productive people at 5 a.m. going for their jogs with their dogs.
It's such a funny contrast.
Yeah. And I just looking at them being like, what are they doing? I fucking conforming to society. Getting up in the morning. Oh, lemmings. And now when I stay up all night as someone that's not drinking and doing drugs, I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I actually have a self-awareness of like, this isn't just a certain guilt is associated with sitting at my desk doing whatever, and then the sky slowly changing from the black to like dark light blue, and then you actually see the sun. I'm like, oh god,
the sound of
I did
birds.
it again.
That's what always made me. I'm like, oh, I fucked up. When you hear the beginning of birds chirping, you're like, oh, I'm so far removed from society's norms.
Yeah.
That, and then thinking like, I feel like that's a part of being an addict, is like you're like, I'm special, and all of the like antisocial behavior is actually cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely that.
I forget where I heard this, but someone had said in regards to routine that it's good to do what everybody else does unless you have a very specific reason not to. You know what I mean? I've sort of carried that with me, because so I could sleep later if I'm out late doing comedy, because that's a deviation from what everybody else does, but it's my job.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if I stayed up late because I was like jacking off, that's not, you can't. I always try to be like, explain your day to somebody else, and if you feel embarrassed, that's something to think about.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a very sound way of, not just breaking the norms to call yourself different.
Yeah.
But to like, okay, you have a reason of doing it. Yeah, that's healthy.
Do you when you so last night you went to bed around 2, right? And you were reading, and I think that is very good. I'm more of a TV at night guy, which is bad.
Yeah.
Even if I'm able to, I fall asleep with the TV on, keep the voices away, and I know that it's hurting my brain and probably my sleep. I have like it goes off within an hour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I wish I could be a book guy, but if I read a book, I'll just get more awake. I don't know what it is.
I get that a lot with depending on the book. If I'm like, it's starting to happen with this book I'm reading right now, where I'm so engrossed in it, where it's like, I just need to keep going. Like I've had a few books I've read recently where they were the kind of things where I was like, oh, I'm halfway through. Well, I'm just going to stay up all night and finish it. So yeah, I need to read though before I fall asleep, just because it'll keep my brain busy enough with something that I won't go crazy as I'm just lying there.
Yeah.
And then also it's something to do where I'm not staring at a screen. Yeah. Just a big thing.
My thing is, if I am watching something, it has to be like, I have a fall asleep show, and it has to be a show that I've watched like a million times so that I don't get like engrossed in the plot. And it has to be like a little boring. It can't be The Simpsons because I find The Simpsons hilarious. Or obviously the seasons
Right.
so like a King of Queens, just like a laugh track. I think a laugh track might put me to sleep. Just the way that like I find it like a laugh track like waves on the ocean, because it's very that type of it's very rhythmic.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm sure if you were the writer for King of Queens, you'd be a little upset that I just like compared that to white noise, but
I think they understand what they created.
like Dr. Frankenstein. They understand the monster that
Okay. They know what they were going for, which was cheap laughs for the Midwest. But there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone needs to laugh. But,
yeah. I mean, I'm from upstate New York, which is basically the Midwest.
It's the Midwest.
Yeah.
Have you do you believe at all in like putting on things while you're going to bed for your brain to consume to develop skills you have?
No, I think that might not be real. Like putting on like learning Spanish.
Yeah.
Like that to like putting on a
thing. Not so much learning Spanish, but like before I started doing comedy, I was playing a lot of music. I was playing in some bands and stuff. And this was also periods where I was doing a lot of drugs. So I would always go to bed with not like easy to digest music, but like hardcore avant-garde jazz, because I was like, I need to get these theories and ideas into my head. So I was curious if you just find like 10-hour compilations of Carlin to fall asleep to.
That Carlin is such a funny example of a comedian to fall asleep to, because I feel like he's so like, I'm a high roller, blah blah blah, like that whole thing. Like no, I don't what I'm learning about the difference between you and I is your quest for knowledge, I want to say, is higher than mine. That seems to be a sticking point, is like you gotta learn more stuff, and that's just I feel like I like learning, but it involves like cognitive processes that I need to not use when I'm trying to fall asleep. I need to be lulled into a slumber. I need an adult nursery rhyme. If anybody has written, you're a musician, if you could write an adult nursery rhyme for me, that'd be very helpful.
That sounds like a fun exercise. Okay, yeah. I'll get to work on that.
Yeah, like, what would it be like? Close your eyes, go to sleep. You'll have a 401k eventually. Something like
that's... no, there's definitely something there.
10 hours on avant-garde jazz music is very funny.
No,
it reminds me
on like John Coltrane and Miles Davis and pass out.
Okay. Would they be happy about that, or would they be bummed that that's their? Would they feel like it's their version of being the King of Queens if they heard you say that?
Oh no, they wouldn't give a shit. They'd hate me. Here's a story I heard about Miles Davis. I don't know if it's actually true, but I think he was on Carson.
Okay. And
Carson asked him, if you had 15 minutes to live, what would you do? And Miles Davis said, I'd strangle a white man and do it nice and slow. So
hell yeah, dude.
I'm pretty sure he would hate me. But
so that did that really happen? Is that okay? Because there's the story about Lauryn Hill.
No,
there's a I think it rises to the level of urban myth. Herself has like denied it, but apparently they were giving an interview, and this wasn't like officially included in the interview, but it's like something she said that they didn't include, which is something to the effect of, I don't want white people to buy my music. The most extreme version of it is, I would rather my children starve than white people buy my music, which is a fucking bar. It is very funny. It's a very funny thing to say.
And if white people don't buy your music, your children might starve.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Do you know the there's a rapper Jadakiss, and there was a documentary that he was a part of, and it was about like hip hop music and like a social commentary like surrounding hip hop, like on our culture or whatever. And they're talking about race, and they ask him like, "Do you make songs? Like, who do you make songs for?" And I think he said, like, I make songs for everybody, but I did have a conversation with a record executive who said, if you are moving more than, I think the number is like 700,000 units or whatever, he's like, you should have white people in mind. You know what I mean? This is a record executive.
So unfortunate.
Yeah. Because it's almost like, what is America? 70% white. So like, obviously. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess. That's just upsetting.
You just start crying.
Yeah, that's so upsetting.
So maybe someone said that to Miles Davis, and he was like, "That's the white man I'm gonna."
Yeah, but jazz trumpeters don't go into it to sell records.
That's true.
It's
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's. But going back to your thing about the pursuit of knowledge, that's something I'm pretty obsessive about, which has its ups and downs. You said you pegged me as a type A morning person. When
you said I pegged you for a second, I was a little concerned. I really did think that. I thought, okay, so for those just listening, you're a guy with a beard and long hair, right? But also, I see you talk about sobriety in your stand-up sometimes, and I see you drinking coffee. So by a lot of stereotyping, I was like, this is a guy who is like kind of cool, but also he has a system. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever.
No, it's fair. I'm definitely a type A person, but I just do it when the sun's down.
Okay. So me... thinking type A means waking up at 4:30 and doing a cold plunge and all of that stuff is like completely wrong. So you could be a night person and type A.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I associate like being a night person with like lower conscientiousness. And I think as I'm describing it, that is not fair.
Does that just go back to the only reason to do things different than everyone else is if you have a specific reason to?
Possibly. Yeah, I think because the way our society is structured, that if you don't wake up early, it's probably because like you're partying at night or you're playing video games at night or something like that.
Right.
But as I'm like describing this, I realize that it's illogical. That you could be a productive person, but start your day in the afternoon. And, so, I mean, there's people that work the night shift.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think every CEO is unconscientious. I hope not. Or, there's going to be more prison breaks, but
yeah. And I also can turn myself. I mean, it's still not ideal. I would much rather wake up at noon or 1 p.m. than 8. But it's just the fact that I'm gainfully unemployed right now. I'm just kind of sleep during the daytime.
Yeah. Yeah. Not being employed is very nice. I am new to not being employed. I have made I've just been telling people I've decided to be a professional comedian. I've almost like The Secret, like it's on my vision board, I don't actually have a vision board, but like that type of thing. And I'm hoping if everything works out, I'll never have to go back because I hate working for somebody else. I actually working from home during lockdown kind of started to make me annoyed that our system, for the most part, is be in this building at a certain time. That started to piss me off more than it used to.
Yeah. Yeah. Thankfully, the last like couple jobs I've had weren't that, where it was, we pay you to do this, not sit here at 9 a.m. until 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Which I think is just generally a appropriate management perspective. But yeah, no, there's definitely especially in the white collar world where I find myself, there's a certain like, okay, we're selling software to software companies that help software companies sell software to software companies, and it's just this perpetual nothingness. But the only thing it does is make a handful of people get a lot of money. It's like, what's the point?
Yeah, I felt that at my last job, and I felt like I had there were two avenues that I could go in when I was explaining what I did to people, and one was I should without giving away the company, I should explain what I used to do. I worked for a company like the website Indeed, but they're for doctors.
Okay.
So I would sell like real estate on our website to employers that were looking to recruit healthcare professionals.
Yeah.
And as I'm explaining this, the software to software example that you just used is 100% the same thing. It's a job that shouldn't exist. It's because like we don't need as many bricklayers now, but like we don't have universal basic income yet.
Yeah.
So we have to do something. So I feel like it's just money shuffling that doesn't make any sense. But when I would explain this to people, I feel like I could either be like, it's a bullshit job, which I feel like I could emotionally handle saying, because I'm like, I'm an artist. So I do this bullshit job so I could do my art. But I have more empathy for people that be like, oh, my work is very complicated. It's very esoteric. You wouldn't understand. There's a lot of moving parts, because it's like, those are the two ways. If you have a bullshit job, those are the two ways you can handle it. You can be like, listen, I know it's a bullshit job, but here's like another way that I give my life meaning.
Right.
If you don't have another way that you give your life meaning, you're like, so it's actually a great opportunity to sell software to software companies that produce software for other software companies.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, if you can position it in your mind as a way, okay, this is serving me, as opposed to I'm serving this company and they're just compensating me for it.
I made the most money that I've made at this bullshit job that I just described.
Yeah.
So, and when I think back to it, like the most useful jobs that I've had, like paid the least. I'm sure someone's made this point before, but like one of my first jobs of stocking shelves at a grocery store, I'm like, I think that was the most useful I ever was, and it was for minimum wage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then everything beyond that is like it's like, wearing a nice polo and showing up in the building before 9. And I as I've gotten older and I've had more bullshit jobs than I've had real jobs, I understand why a lot of adults are depressed.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also the fact that, we aren't compensated for a contribution to society, but we're compensated based on the amount of money we can make, which makes sense in a way. But is also like my last job, I was doing business consulting for influencers. And I was making a lot of money doing that. About twice as much money as my girlfriend who's a special needs teacher.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Yeah. And it's not even like in that example, because you could argue like low skill, low compensation. Which, for stocking shelves at a grocery store, but
it's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Being a special needs teacher, I used to be a teacher's assistant at a school for children with special needs. So I know like how fucking unbelievably difficult it is.
Yeah.
I've been, I was bit by a child once and had to have like shots for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like fucking, and then it's like emotionally draining and you got to deal with the parents. Yeah. That's fuck, man.
Yeah. And it's like, I would hear her story of her day and she's like, well, this kid had ringworm and was like running around hugging everyone. I had to physically separate students and like restrain kids multiple times. And then I was like, oh, I sent a few DMs.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder how many people, because when I had the last job that I had that I described earlier, I was making more money than I thought I would or deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I did feel guilty, you know,
Yeah.
and part of me was like, well, because I started working at that place when I was 30. And, you know, when I moved to New York, I had a paralegal job that paid $15 an hour. That was harder. Going back to like the harder your job is, the less money you make. So part of me was like, okay, I've paid my dues. But then the other part of me was like, yeah, there's lots of people paying their dues and they never get. There's some there's a bit of luck involved too. And I feel like if you don't acknowledge, like, even if you worked hard for something, you also got lucky, then you're kind of being an asshole, you know.
If you work hard for something and also get lucky?
Yeah, because I feel like success is hard work plus luck.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can't admit that the plus luck was an ingredient, you're kind of being a dickhead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just putting yourself in the position for good things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it goes.
And money doesn't buy happiness, Gabriel. That's a thought I just thought of, by the way. If you're listening, please give me credit if you say that to people.
It's very original.
It certainly like buys security
and freedom.
Yeah, and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking for your comedian, of course. You and I like do shows a lot of the time. I covered. If you ever want to go to that venue, it's a good venue. But you're also looking for a day job. Are you trying to help influencers again?
No. No.
The way, because I laugh every time I've heard you describe this job, because you talk about it on stage too, and every time you say it, I could hear the disdain for the job and the clients in your voice.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was an interesting thing to do for a year, just because you got to view a certain segment of the population that is glorified and deal with them on a day-to-day basis to realize how awful they are. Because I think this is a pretty universal thing with the way our society is made up. When you have thousands of people telling you how great you are every day, you are going to turn into a terrible person.
Okay.
Like, it's just, unless you have a very strong system in place where you're also being belittled, then yeah, it's not going to be good.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not trying to do that. We may not be able to use this, but this is a part. I'm looking for jobs right now, and I've accidentally interviewed with multiple. I think they're covers for terrorist organizations.
Okay.
I interviewed with a company that teaches people how to fly airplanes.
Okay.
It's a
Saudis?
flight simulator company. And it's is like kind of a Israeli military company.
Okay.
Located in the US. They have an office in Israel too.
Okay.
Where they teach people how to fly F-35 fighter jets. Their office is in the World Trade Center.
Okay.
It's a bunch of Israelis teaching people how to fly airplanes in the World Trade Center.
Okay.
Bold office location choice.
Yeah, it's I like it in a.
It's kind of funny. I thought I was gonna, if they offered me the job, I was gonna take it just because that'd be funny to go into an office, go into the World Trade Center every day, and just be around cockpits of airplanes.
Yeah,
selling flight simulator tools. And then I had this interview yesterday with an Israeli like home security company where they sell
different. You can't stop talking to the Israelis.
Yeah, I think so. Where they sell like virtual doorman and home security tools.
Okay.
And like, making the small talk at the beginning of the call, and he was like, "Oh, how was your 4th of July?" And it was like, "Oh, it was good. Saw some fireworks. Didn't see anyone get their hands blown off. Ha ha, silly joke." And he just just looked at me deadpan, and I could see the look in his eyes where he's like, he has seen people's hands get blown off before.
Oh, geez. Okay. Fuck. That's wild. What a different life experience.
Yeah. How do you feel about forced military service?
Ooh.
Like mandatory military service as an institution?
Yeah, that's interesting because it's sort of
maybe not. It doesn't have to necessarily be military, but forced public service when you turn 18.
Forced public service. Yeah, because I have heard that some countries, they do compulsory, but if it's not military, it could also be, some sort of other public service. I think that it's interesting. I've had this conversation with friends before because I feel like as Americans, we're very like, well, what are our rights?
Mm-hmm.
What rights do we get? Like, that's a big part of citizenship. The first 10 amendments to our Constitution are the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
It was like, here are the things that the government cannot do to you, cannot make you do, and which I think is great, of course. The other side of the coin to like citizenship, I think, is responsibility.
Yeah.
And we all accept that to some extent. Like, most people agree that we should pay some semblance of taxes, right? Like, give your money to the government, and the government will do its best to funnel it back into the greater good, right? I think almost everybody agrees with that in principle. Where people get annoyed is like the decisions that the government makes with that money.
Yeah.
So that's like a negotiation. It's like rights versus responsibilities. But I think because I'm American, I am a little more biased towards the rights. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and maybe I can't justify this intellectually, but the idea of compulsory military service when there's not an emergency gives me, to borrow a phrase from Twitter girls, the ick.
Right.
Gives me the ick.
Yeah, it's interesting. But like there's like Switzerland has compulsory service and they're universally not involved in anything. Which, and I remember when I don't remember how old I was, maybe early teens, where we had a foreign exchange student from Finland and they have compulsory service of some kind. What are the Finnish doing? So it's some kind of public service.
It's interesting you mentioned Switzerland and Finland, who
universally very high standards of living, very low poverty levels, very intelligent.
I guess the difference between that and if we implemented compulsory military service in America is that America is involved in wars. So there's like a higher risk.
Right.
That would be like the argument now is like, well, we have a volunteer military, so you are taking the risk voluntarily.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah. I think some kind of mandatory public service would be really good if, let's say, for 2 years, but then that also counted towards college. So you've developed a set of skills.
Yeah.
You can choose your public service based on the skills you're looking to gather in your life.
Yeah.
And that way you actually get experience versus committing to a major, which is all bullshit.
Yes.
And then, then you go to college for 2 years. And that might be free because you've just done a bunch of public service. But who am I to change American laws? This is purely thinking.
Speculative thinking. I think that it is a great idea. I'm thinking of how most people, if you get a bachelor's degree in America, a lot of people spend the first 2 years doing gen eds, general education requirements, which is just high school part 2.
Yeah.
And to me, it makes zero sense. I've heard people describe it as like, well, everyone's coming from different high schools, so you don't know if everyone's on the same playing field. But I'm like, well, we did take like
standardized
test. Like that's supposed to be, I don't know. But I do think I think mandatory public service would also take away the adult daycare feel of a lot of colleges in America.
Yeah.
Because it is people like taking gen ed. So it's like, okay, you're reading, Lord of the Flies on Thursday, and then getting wasted on Friday, and then getting wasted on Saturday.
Yeah.
And then like maybe reading a bit of Lord of the Flies again on Sunday. I don't know how productive that is, but if you were doing, can you think of an example of a non-military public service?
Like school service.
Okay.
Or I can't.
No, that's because I've heard people say like in some of those countries that you mentioned, like the more socialist type of thing, where a lot of the like the mail and a lot of like government admin, like DMV stuff. I think that might be included.
Yeah, that would be that. Yeah, public agencies. Yeah,
healthcare maybe. I think that
administrative work in hospitals. Yeah.
That's interesting. And I wonder if that would be part of like, you would have to take a test to see like what service would like best suit you.
Yeah.
I'm
there's some
sure
kind
there
of
would be a thing.
Aptitude and inclination test.
There would. Do you think? I think that there would be a thing of like the rich kids would get out of it somehow. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's already a thing.
Because with anything else, there's going to be like exciting options and not exciting options, and the not exciting options are going to have to be filled by somebody. You know what I mean? So like, I can imagine that there would be like a rich kid, and no shade to our wealthier listeners. In fact, subscribe to the Patreon if you're listening. I don't have a Patreon, but I feel like there would be a lot of social media influencer managers. Like that would be twisted into public service.
Oh, Jesus.
And then like the arts, I'm sure you could be like, well, that is actually art. You're helping the arts.
Yeah.
And then there would be like, but we also need someone to take out the trash on the public street corners. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there would be like a big class divide there.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a system that would be free of nepotism, but
but I do like it. There does have to be this whole thing of like getting a liberal arts degree that you are then in debt for, and it hasn't helped you with your career, is not sustainable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'm really happy. Like I studied sports management and economics, which is relatively applicable on a number of levels. Just having a solid economics understanding, personal finance is a very important thing. And I get asked a lot, people are like, oh, you're an English major, right? No, you can read books for free. Or for very cheap.
Yeah.
So yeah, go to school for something that's relevant and applicable and will support you in life. But there's a lot of time in the day.
Yeah. So I have a political science degree, which was a mistake. For some people it might not be. I'm sure that there's a way to figure that out.
But there's something, I feel like to really use political science, you have to go to law school or I got my poli-sci degree with the intention of going to law school, and then senior year I was like, I actually don't want to go to law school. And then I was like, well, fuck. And the advice that or at least that I was given when I was entering college, it was like, major in something you like. Doesn't matter what you major in, but like getting a bachelor's degree is the window to getting most like white collar jobs, which I feel like used to be true and then became untrue by the time I graduated. I still feel like it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I might not have been. It's funny though, because I was describing my last job, which is very similar to selling software to software companies, which is I feel like the barrier was like a bachelor's degree, but I didn't need one. You know what I mean?
Oh, interesting.
I don't think anybody I feel like if there was like a reliable test of like conscientiousness and creativity, we could do away with like mandatory bachelor's degree in something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty pointless. The only thing that was like, the only thing that I actually got out of college was the developing actual skills, which I didn't. A little bit did from classes.
Yeah.
Like understanding supply and demand. There's value to that and Nash equilibrium and all that. But it was from actually like getting jobs and internships while I was in school that gave me a skill set that was immediately marketable when I left it.
Now, so you said economics and sports
management.
Sports management.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you a sports guy?
I was. I wanted to do something just reasonable and sound.
Yeah.
In college, like economics and some kind of business degree, just to cover my bases for the future. But I also have always had an inclination towards entertainment.
Okay.
And I thought sport management would be an interesting way of that because I've always really enjoyed the spectacle of sport. You know, there's something very undeniable about sitting in a stadium of 30,000 people and all cheering for the same thing. That's intoxicating.
Yeah. And when it's not fascism?
And when it's not fascism.
Just people having a nice time.
Yeah, just people having a nice time. And so I wanted to do something in that. And then after, like I had a student, I was in a Madison Square Garden has like a student associate program. So I did that for one of my last semesters of school.
Okay.
Which was cool just to work at the garden. That was fun.
As a comedian to say you worked at MSG and then not provide any more information might be a great idea.
You've seen this next comedian at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Selling season tickets in the corridors. But
I mean, there are so many comedians that have like such a tangential, is that a word?
Yeah.
Relationship to
their
credit. Yeah. Like I was hosting a comedy show and someone said Comedy Central. And already it's like, well, Comedy Central is not quite, what it was.
Yeah.
You know, if you said Comedy Central in the early aughts, it'd be like, oh, well, you're famous. Yeah. That was a Comedy Central Presents special in the late 90s, early aughts was like the equivalent of sitting next to Carson. That's not true, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And he was like, I was briefly in a web series for Comedy Central.
Yeah.
And he's like, but just say Comedy Central. I'm like, yeah, of course.
I know someone who uses Showtime as their credits and they're an extra in a show on Showtime.
Oh, that's hilarious, dude. I love that so much. I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
As you get older, you realize that there's an amount of deception for just like everyday life.
Yeah.
So I've always felt a little bit dirty when I am applying to a new job. Like when I'm telling my my boss at my current job, like, I have a doctor's appointment on Tuesday, but I don't have a doctor's appointment on Tuesday, Gabe. I'm going to a job interview. You know what I mean? And even that, which I feel like, if the current boss had found out I was lying, he wouldn't be like, well, what the fuck? Like, that's just part of the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I don't even like that. I don't like lying to people.
Yeah. I've been a salesperson through college and business consulting for influencers. We're just selling influencers stuff.
Yeah.
But I call it business consulting because that's what business consulting is, just selling people stuff. So I've got no issues with being flexible around the truth. It's especially if it's that, to be fair, in contexts that aren't personal.
Yeah.
Because when you're personally lying to someone, you're still.
Yeah. If you're like, I love you.
Yeah. That's fundamental, like, human sin. But in a business context, the truth is flexible and the truth needs to be a system that serves your needs.
Yes.
In a business context, because no one actually cares about anyone. in capitalism.
Guys, turn this podcast off and start the revolution. Okay. No, I think that's when I was working at the bullshit company that I've described a couple times now, we had a young woman just out of college. We had a lot, and the company would like hire a lot of folks like that, and then like if they took any days off or whatever, they would fire them. Really great company. And I remember one time, just to keep morale up, you know, because what I did was essentially sales as well. And when I was teaching people how to do the same thing, I'd be like, well, here's how you present this information. And I didn't want to be so cynical to be like, so this is kind of bullshit, you know, but they would, if they weren't dumb, they would figure out that it was kind of bullshit. And I remember she went, I can't sell something if I don't believe in it. And I just kind of looked in the other direction and hoped that she would then say something else unrelated. You know what I mean? Because I was like, I don't know.
Learning how to sell something you don't believe in is a tremendous human skill. It'll serve you endlessly. Just do it. Yeah. Put on a good face, perform well, and then clock out.
You can't bring it with you, I feel like. Like if you're like a liar in sales and you're like, oh shit, lying is useful, then you can't be like, here's how I could be Machiavellian with my friends and family.
Yeah. No, you need division in your life.
You can't be Daniel Day-Lewis method acting as a salesperson. Be like, well, if I make myself lie all the time, I'll lie even better.
Yeah. Like my first job, like fully out of school, was I sold predatory financial services.
That's the name of the company, Predatory Financial Services Inc.
No, it was. I won't say it. I really want to though, because it's such a fake name. You hear that name and you're like, yeah, okay.
It's like if Dr. Nick from The Simpsons was a corporation.
I haven't watched The Simpsons.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just trust me that it was a good reference.
Yeah. All right, I got you. Yeah, and it was one of those things where, you acted and performed. That's ultimately what a sales call is. It's a performance.
Yeah.
And then when the office was over, you numbed yourself. But that's not a healthy situation, but it teaches you certain things, which is how to be a half decent bullshit artist.
And I feel like if you're a half decent bullshit artist, like game recognizes game, so you're less likely to be scammed yourself. My first job, actually the paralegal job that I made $15 an hour doing when I first moved to New York, was foreclosure prosecution.
Okay.
So our clients were the banks that were foreclosing on houses. And when I was interviewing for the job, the guy very candidly, he was like, it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are various reasons why people can't pay their mortgage, but it's generally, not the bank's problem. And so that's what we do. And, I was like, well, I do want to move to New York City, so I might do this. And I did do it for 9 months. And I worked for title curative, which basically means once a house is foreclosed, you have to make sure there's no liens on the property so that when the next person buys it, they're not responsible for those liens. Very complicated legal thing that I didn't even know was a thing until I started working for this place. So if you if you get a parking ticket and don't pay it, they could tie it to the real estate that you own.
Yeah, it all gets cross collateralized.
So the guy that was interviewing me was like, so you'll be in title curative, which is actually not at all related to foreclosure. And I was like, it still feels icky. And he was like, it's certainly icky. But I'm, the whole time I'm like, well, this is actually bullshit. But I was wondering, because we all have like a story about ourselves. And I was wondering about my coworkers. I never asked them that if they felt like they were doing, if they bought that, they were like, well, I'm doing title curative. It's not at all related to foreclosure. And it's like, what kind is? You know what I mean? And it was a sort of thing where I'm like, well, I want to do the job well.
Right.
But also I'm like, this bullshit.
Yeah. We had this thing because the thing I was selling was debt settlement.
Okay.
Which is a way of basically, it's like a step before bankruptcy. And I was convincing people to do this.
Okay.
Where some of them definitely needed to do it and some of them didn't need to do it. But that's besides the point. But debt settlement, if you Google it, everything on the internet will tell you not to do it.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of a desperate financial move. So we rebranded it as credit card modification.
Ooh. Okay.
Which means nothing.
Yeah. But when you Google it, you don't get scary things.
Yeah. Yeah. You get our well-placed articles.
Well, Gabe, if people want to modify their credit cards or possibly go to a comedy show that you're on, where could they go?
Every Sunday night, I'm at the Tiny Cupboard. In
Bushwick, Brooklyn.
In Bushwick, Brooklyn, New York, United States, the world.
Only known universe. We don't have time.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm around. I'm all over the place. Check me out on Instagram. It_Gabriel_Ross.
Arguably too many underscores, but still a good follow, guys. Follow Gabriel.
Yeah. I say funny things and have thoughts.
Yeah, and if you have thoughts, you could either write into the Before Hours podcast at gmail.com. You could DM me at Bobby Sheen, LOL. I haven't cleared this with Gabe, but go ahead and DM Gabe. And thank you for joining us, man.
Thank you for having me. This was a good time.
And remember, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I'm just playing Night Owls. You know I love them.
Stay up all night and come up with grand ideas.
Thank you.